It's high time we went for a good poke around Lucid Motors, one of America's brightest electric car startups. So here's the first of two films where we go inside Lucid, meet its top brass, and get stuck into cars which could be Tesla and the luxury Europeans' worst nightmare. All right, well, who could be better to talk us around Lucid's second album than Derek Jenkins? Derek, thank you very much for having us, the Senior Vice President of Lucid's Design and Brand. And my first question is, you've got an opportunity that very few car designers have had in the past century. Start totally afresh, no kind of back catalogue, no emotional baggage to get on with. So how do you go about just dreaming up a car from the middle of nowhere? And yeah, how does it end up looking like this?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and you're right. That is a rare opportunity to really start fresh with a new brand. I think for us, we established some early brand values around luxury, performance, efficiency and range, aerodynamics, interior space. And once you have those attributes kind of figured out, you start to lay out the vehicle. Then you really want to define the face and the character of the vehicle. In the case of Gravity, it's all about this front end. It creates this kind of bullet train quality. It's set up around kind of a strong stance on the road. Of course, aerodynamics plays a huge role.
Yeah, now you've not done a great big fake grille, which I think anyone who's seen an electric BMW will be grateful for. But you know, these things don't need a huge grille, and obviously it's not in your design DNA to have a huge mesh. So yeah, thank you for not doing that. But there's also some quite clever stuff going on here with like really slim headlights.
That's right. So you're right about the grille, and that also adds to the cleanliness of the car, and it's good for aerodynamics. Our lighting signature is a big part of it. We kept the light blade theme that we have on Lucid Air. We have this micro lens array technology, which is an ultra slim lighting technology and very efficient with energy, so it actually helps your range. And then of course we've minimized the cooling down low. That's better for aerodynamics, and of course it helps our range.
Now if anyone was counting like aero bingo, you've mentioned aerodynamics like several times already. Thing is, there's a reason that Formula One cars, Indy cars don't look like Hummers, isn't it? If you were going to try and build an aero car, you wouldn't start with an SUV.
That's
so
correct,
can you just point out to us like some of the details that you've worked in that desperately try and make, you know, a large car, a tall car, kind to the air and punch a kind of smooth hole through it?
Absolutely. You know, it all starts with this kind of bullet train type quality of the front end. It's very upright. Airflow comes across the top. We create some acceleration, high pressure here. That sets up the air for flowing over the windscreen. Really tapered corners, pronounced on the edge. All this ducting serves a purpose to bring an air curtain through to the side of the vehicle.
So this is real? This is
absolutely real,
passage,
yeah.
it's
a
not
major
fake
part.
Oh yeah.
It keeps the airflow clean here, and that sets up the flow down the side of the car. If you're disturbed in this area at the front wheel, then you have problems all the way down the side of the car, and that adds to drag. Of course, the cabin of the car is essential. So very fast windscreen, very tapered rear spoiler. So as you come around the back of the car, this tapers over the second and third row passenger, and then accelerates down, and that creates a really clean separation from the back of the vehicle. All of these details work to create clean separation off the back. Even down below where we have very fine treatments, all creates what we call a clean wake off the back of the car, which ultimately contributes to a low coefficient of drag.
Yeah, and I know on the Air you have this incredible diffuser where it, rather than it being like a token bit of plastic shoved on the back end of the car, it starts like under the B.
That's correct. And you know, we really embrace the aerodynamic challenge, but do it in a way that brings beauty to the car, brings sleekness to the car, and ultimately expresses its capability.
Derek's penchant for lean, unfussy designs is one I find quite refreshing in an age where car makers have been in a weird race to add more angles and aggression to their styling, dressing up a friendly family car to look like a Transformers villain. Just looking down the side of the car here, so there's two things that stand out to me. You've not got an aero-faced wheel.
That's right, yes.
Is that just because you hate the look of them? Or?
No, with Gravity we've chosen, in this case, this is the top of the line wheel. This is our sport wheel, so it's a more open spoke wheel. Yeah. So there is a small aerodynamic penalty that comes from selecting this wheel. We do have an aero wheel option, which has a flush spoke condition, and that optimizes for range. And that would be our range variant option.
And then if we just pop down here, the other thing, and I'm glad you've done this, but I'm still going to mention it. a proper mirror.
We have mirrors.
Not
yeah,
cameras
that.
like hiding down here. Now, I'm glad because as someone who drives cars in the real world, these are much easier to use. But obviously, you know, there's going to be some aero penalty, some wind noise penalty. Can you just explain why you stuck with common sense?
You know, we've of course, like most car companies, we've explored the video mirror solution, and there are some small advantages from an aerodynamic standpoint. But honestly, this is a very aerodynamic mirror. It's very useful. We have good viewing space, and I think it looks beautiful. It helps make the car look wider from the front, which is always creates personality and character.
Everyone's always going for the width, isn't it?
Yeah, and so, you know, I'll tell you, I also like keeping the interior free of these additional video screens that are necessary with video mirrors. So
we'll see when we get inside. You're not short of screens.
No, we're not short of screens.
Yeah, we've
kept it clean.
Yeah. Car designers as well, when I've spoken to them, they often talk about inspiration from nature, from predators, from architecture. I know you've got a coffee table inspiration inside. Is there anything, or let me put it a different way, what's on your mood board in your design office? Is there pictures of tigers and leopards and
no tigers,
Golden Gate Bridge? Or
no leopards. You know, it's often things that are aircraft inspired, believe it or not. That's also been a big topic with Lucid Air. And I think the reason for that is because we always felt like both classic aircraft and even modern aircraft, there's an honesty to the
nothing's on an airliner for styling.
No, yet somehow they're aesthetically pleasing, and I feel like that's a great starting point, especially since we take aerodynamics and fluid dynamics so serious, and then composing that with automotive elements that give it strength on the road is a real starting point for us. And of course, just a broader industrial design, more sculpted type of industrial design, product design that inspires us. But I have to say, keeping a strong connection with the automobile is also very important. So the average person can look at it and see hopefully a beautiful automobile.
The Gravity is promised to cost from around $80,000 when it goes on sale late this year, and being relatively late to the luxury electric SUV party, it'll have to wade into battle against the likes of the Tesla Model X, Mercedes EQS, BMW iX, Audi, Rivian, Cadillac. There's going to be a lot of companies fighting over your money. Before we do the interior tour, let me take you around the block in a very early Gravity prototype to prove, if nothing else, that we're not talking about a concept car here. It actually does drive. That's very important in case you're looking around going, I'm not sure about this interior finish, that you realise this is an alpha prototype. This is like the earliest kind of Lucid Gravity running model that it's possible to have. It's street legal enough for the guys from Lucid to take on some tests, hence why they've trusted me with something which is, I imagine, worth an absolutely unforgivable amount of money. But it's completely unfinished. It's 3D printed materials under where the camera's mounted over there. You might see that the window's not come up, but that's fine because this is just validation of the general ideas. They're making sure that, you know, this smaller steering wheel idea, how does that work in the real world? And they're also working on the Lucid trademark, I guess, which is the torque vectoring. This car, unlike the Air, is also going to have rear steering. It's not quite working on this car yet. It's a matter of weeks away. That's how quickly the development progresses, but they are figuring out how the torque vectoring goes with those separate motors and how that's going to help this car, which at the end of the day is enormous to a European anyway, have an agility that frankly it doesn't really deserve. The other thing that's interesting to me about this is how quickly rivals are going to appear from all angles. I mean, okay, if you're in the States right now, you can already buy a Rivian if you want a big electric SUV. I mean, yeah, there's the Hummer. You've seen Jack's video driving that to Baghdad, worth checking out elsewhere on the Top Gear channel, but I think that's more of a status car and this is more of a sensible EV. But look what's coming soon. I mean, Range Rover electric. Derek mentioned it when we were talking earlier. He said he's owned a couple of Range Rovers, said he's fascinated to see how they figure out how to turn a car that's all about being square and blocky into an efficient, air-smoothed EV. They've certainly got an advantage here, haven't they, where they can start with a clean sheet design. it's difficult not to keep coming back to the steering wheel. I'm very, very glad they didn't go with the yoke. It's become a whole meme arms race, hasn't it? Are you in for the yoke? Are you against it? I actually thought that controlling what's a really, really huge car with a tiny steering wheel would feel kind of unintuitive somehow, would feel toy-like, but not finding it that unnatural. Ultimately, we're only doing a little town drive today because, like I said, this thing is a busy prototype. It's just come back from some serious hardcore track testing, figuring out traction control systems and torque vectoring, and it's got a lot more work to do before Lucid put it out of its misery, but they've let me have a quick go, and I am just getting on with it. And I'm someone who's frankly a bit of a Luddite. I don't like it when change happens in car design. I like a big steering wheel that you can see through. I don't like it when it's too thick. I like my stalks. I don't like having lots of screens, so I should hate this really, shouldn't I? This is a bit of an arms race at the moment, people coming up with different concepts for this. Now I'm going to mention it, a yoke.
Yeah.
You could have had a yoke. It's a topless steering wheel. It's not really worked for Tesla. I think they've now made it an option rather than a standard thing. Did you think about doing a yoke? Did you try the Tesla product? And yeah, can you just explain a bit about why you went for the whole kind of shrunken steering wheel?
Yeah. So I mean, it's a great question, and yes, we did think about it, and that does achieve a similar viewability for that center screen, but it does hinder the drivability. There's a learning curve there. In our case, we still wanted good hand-over-hand kind of experience for people. And so we really focused on reducing the diameter of the steering wheel and optimizing the vertical height of the steering wheel so we can get that viewability.
Now I'm going to big up Europe for a second here, because you said there's no other car on the market that does this, but in Europe we have Peugeot.
Okay.
And Peugeot have a shrunken steering wheel with something they call the iCockpit, I think. That's where
right.
it's, the display's right up again in your eye line. It's a similar thing. Now, I don't think they're on sale in the US or in North America, but did you find one of those in Europe? Did you think, this is interesting, or have you had a go in one and sort of tried to troubleshoot the issues with that?
I have, but that was not. I mean, I knew that from years past because they've been doing that for some while.
Yeah.
I know they have a new vehicle coming with a horizontal display similar to Lucid Air, but I haven't tested that vehicle or experienced that vehicle.
Yeah, it's interesting because that to me feels, I suppose to some customers in the US, this will feel quite alien and new.
Yeah.
Me, having driven a load of the Peugeot stuff in the UK, this feels familiar. This is new as well, isn't it? We've got your haptic.
Yeah, these touch
haptic
tablets. It's a new approach. We were more analog in Lucid Air, and we wanted greater versatility and future proofing to add more functionality to this area.
Yeah.
And so it's very tactile, yet it's quite swipeable and clickable, which allows more versatility and usability of the screens.
Now I'm going to get into like my biggest pet peeve. Anyone who's ever watched anything I've presented on the Top Gear YouTube channel will know that I am a touchscreen atheist.
Okay.
I'm not an evangelist. I like my physical control. So I'm very glad that you have clickable buttons for turning the temperature up and down, the fan speed, the volume, and your kind of smart button
That's
here.
correct, yes.
Yeah, just does something that you're going to use all the time. But obviously a lot of this is still touchscreen. Are you a kind of a minimalist guy? You want these buttons purged? And how do you decide what gets a physical control and what can live in the screen?
Right. Yeah, it's a great question, and it's certainly a huge topic as the car becomes more and more digitized. There's a tendency to just eliminate all analog interface, all tactile feedback, and go straight to touchscreen on everything. And we've taken a pretty hardline discerning approach to this, where we really say, what are the fundamental things? Like, if I just want to get in the car and like turn down the fan or turn up the fan or turn up the volume, that should be an analog interface. If I want to just adjust the airflow or direction of my air vents, that should be an analog interface. The door handle, the window switch, these types of things need to be analog. And so we've really featured those. If you noticed, all of our analog interface is very tactile. It's very luminous, so it's got a quality to it.
Okay.
And so we've really pushed on materiality and analog where it makes sense.
Yeah. But you haven't, for example, it's interesting to me that you've got, say 4 window switches, but you've got no mirror controls.
That's right.
So why does that get relegated into the screen, but window switches are important enough to get their own button?
Yeah, I think because that's something where the mirror adjustment is just not something you're doing that often. You have profile settings, you can set your profiles, it remembers that, it knows it's you. And so those are things that we can really set. If I just want to roll the window down, I got to get to that window. If I want to open that door, I want
my drive-through now.
Yeah, it's like get to it, you know? And I feel like they're reinventing that is not necessary, where something like mirror adjustment, steering wheel adjustment, those are profile type settings.
So you want that like memorized, so like you get in, the car knows it's me.
Exactly.
And so it sets it for me.
Yeah.
So talking of reinventing stuff, the next sort of thing that seems to be being stripped out, which I hate, is stalks. We've had stalks for decades. They seem to work brilliantly. You don't have to look at them. You know, you can make them feel really high quality if you nail them, or you make them out of metal. You've still got them. Rivals haven't. Why have you done that?
Yeah. So we went through that whole study. We did a lot of user testing. Both with folks that are familiar with electric cars, including Lucid, and folks that are not. And after we went through that, watched the use cases, put people through the trials of with and without, we made the conscious choice to hold on to that, and I think it's better for it. It's just some things. I'm not saying that eventually that won't be the broader trend in the industry, but there's a learning curve to that, and I worry sometimes we don't want to create an unnecessary annoyance now, even if that's going to be potentially a long-term trend.
I don't know if we can show it in this demo car, but there's a feature in here that I think a lot of people have been crying out for since big displays appeared in cars, and it's something that. Were you inspired by Saab? Because you remember Saab used to have the night mode.
Oh, yeah,
and you could hit a button in a Saab because they were inspired by fighter jets, and you only have the speedo illuminated.
Right,
Everything else is gone.
I do remember that.
Now there's something in here, remind me what it's called?
It's called Digital Detox, and that's all about kind of reduction.
Screens off.
Yeah, essentially.
So just the speedo?
Yeah,
shows?
so you swipe down,
okay.
And Digital Detox is front and center. Of course, you could assign this anywhere you like.
So you could actually make it one button.
Exactly.
Push.
So you hit that.
And everything goes dark.
It's just the basics. This is off. This has a very low luminous glow to it. Your core information, drive mode and speed, and everything else is pushed back, because it's like if I'm coming home, I'm on a dark highway, or I don't need all that. You can of course still have the audio playing and things like. It's not rocket science, but I think people would appreciate that.
I'm sure that some of your tech guys might be furious that like all the features they've incorporated into this, and my favorite thing is the fact that you can make it all go away.
Yeah,
absolutely. But that is, as we become kind of these sort of screen obsessed species.
Yeah.
Being able to have one touch and it's gone on, you've had a long day, maybe you've had a long flight, and then you've got a long drive and it's dark. You don't want to be having this light beamed into you and stopping you sleeping.
That's right, that's right.
And I think it's interesting as well, I know we're not in the back right now, but just talking about the rear seats, you didn't go for like the biggest possible screen in the back so that your kids can also be welded to their content the whole time. You went for a really tough tray table so they can eat their Happy Meal.
I think, sometimes that you just need to facilitate the use of digital devices rather than try to replace the digital device, right, with something else. Because
so you've got a mounting point for your tablet, right?
So we create a great table, a nice little holder for your tablet, or at least something sturdy enough to put your laptop on. And people can get on with the things that's important to them. And I think one thing that's important with Sanctuary and the in-car experience is we forget that being inside the automobile is a captive experience. And we have oversight over all the senses, the visuals, the audio, the ambience of the climate control system, the lighting and ambient feeling, the seat massage, heated and cooled, so it's like now we can bring you a multi-sense experience that's kind of unlike anything else you would do in your daily life, right? And so that's where we think, again, if you think of what Lucid even stands for as a word, it's clarity of mind. And it's like, if we can bring that into your daily life, to me that's a big part of it. But it can also be about a kind of group setting as well, where we can bring music. Even
this is the karaoke kind of function, basically.
A karaoke experience, which could be a lot of fun for a group. And this is something that I think people could enjoy.
If you prefer your screens on, then you'll appreciate the various meditation modes the Gravity can perform, or its lively little karaoke function. But for me, those are the gimmicks, and what really sets the best SUVs apart is how useful they are when you need a big, practical box.
Okay, Derek, we can agree to disagree, hood, bonnet, but can you just show us your party piece? Because I know you're quite proud of this.
Yeah, no, this is a big part of the shape of the front of the vehicle, and really creates a nice experience. And I think one of the things that people weren't expecting is that we would offer an additional row of seats beyond our 3 rows inside the vehicle. It's our 4th row.
Yeah.
So yeah, we saw this. This is an accessory. Of course, this is primarily going to be used for utility. You know, think muddy boots, snowshoes, things like that. It's really great for carry-on bags and groceries.
I'm going to take a seat.
Grab a seat, you know. So we imagine like people pull up to the beach, get a glass of wine. We've got cup holders up here.
Oh no, wait, that's so American.
You've got to have cup holders, right? And so, you know, and maybe you bring your little Bluetooth speaker out here and you can just enjoy the view.
Yeah.
And we even provide some shelter if it's not the best weather.
There you go. If they bring it to the UK, we're weatherproof.
That's right.
Now, we've just been having a bit of a gossip kind of off camera about like general car design, and I wanted to bring this back up because your career started with another very minimalist, aero-efficient car that was incredibly ambitious for its time, and it could have probably fitted in here with me. It was
the Audi A2.
The Audi A2. Now, children, go and look up the Audi A2 if you're not aware of it. This was an all-aluminium, incredibly aerodynamic city car that was one of these Ferdinand Piëch projects, wasn't it? Like with Volkswagen XL1, and the Veyron, any one of these cars which is like, we're not going to compromise, we're going to build something that is a technological standpoint for all time. And then like with so many clever cars over the years, it wasn't a success sales-wise. Can you just talk about what it was like early on in your career to be handed that kind of blank sheet of paper? And
no, that was exciting. I mean, I had just joined Audi. It was 1994. The late, great Ferdinand Piëch was still leading the Volkswagen Group, and super ambitious around sustainability and efficiency back in the 90s. And so that project was I was fortunate enough to be directly involved in that. Really focused on space packaging, efficiency, aerodynamics, and it's just something that was incredibly ahead of its time, and it was a real boot camp for me as a designer to be part of that. And certainly there are some parallels with this program. There's parallels
if you took
even
an A2
with
and stretched it and upsized it. There's a little bit of Audi.
There is a little bit, you know. But at the time that was a challenging project. I know it wasn't immediately successful in the marketplace, but it's one of those vehicles that comes along and shows that the thinking was in the right place. Maybe it was just a decade or two too early for the market to really bring a big success. I've been in car design as a professional for 30 years now, and I can tell you right now is by far the most exciting and dynamic time to be in this industry.
Yeah. If you want to be a car designer, it's a good time. You just mentioned, I'm going to stand up now because I feel like you're standing, so I shouldn't chill out. If you're talking about edgy cars and angular cars, there's nothing that epitomizes that more right now than the Cybertruck. I know that's not like a direct rival for this, but it is, right now it's one of those kind of like headline making cars. As a car designer, when you look at that, do you just wince and go, how the heck did you get that into production? Do you admire it? And do you think, as a final question, do you think that's the start of ever more radical designs, or do you think that will become a bit of an outlier?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I could never predict that right now. I think that only time will tell. I definitely applaud the novel approach, absolutely. I think that that's interesting. It's obviously a risk, but it could also yield reward. I think regardless of its success or not, it's influential. It's in the world. It's making an impression on people. And so it will have an influence. Any vehicle throughout history that came along and was really that polarizing or noteworthy, whether it was market successful or not, it usually had some knock-on effect to the overall evolution of automotive aesthetics. So in that regard, I always applaud something that comes to market that's uniquely distinct and different.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with you. But like for me, I prefer a more smooth looking thing. I mean, I'm leaning on it and it's not hurting me.
Right.
So with that, I'll say, Derek, it was lovely to meet you.
Likewise.
Thank you very much. And I really hope you put the steering wheel, small or not, on the other side quite soon.
At some point, I think you can continue to expect that.
You can continue to expect that is a slightly waffly way of saying, let us concentrate on selling some in the US first, then we'll worry about putting one across the pond with the steering wheel on the other side. Hopefully Lucid can last out its current cash burn phase and get to that stage, because on a first impression, they've got quite a few bright ideas that the old guard would do well to learn from.